Hey everybody, hope you're having a glorious week. So right off the rip, I actually had a really hard time naming this episode. I didn't want to call it the best conspiracy theories or the most well-known or the weirdest because I honestly don't feel like it's any of those things. So in a nutshell, these are just some of my favorite conspiracy theories because, I don't know, why not? But before we get into it, I like to start these episodes off with a bit of a life update. If you're not into that, if you want to skip all of my brain puke and get right to the meat of the episode, feel free to skip forward to the 7-minute and 10-second mark. If you do want to stick around and hear me ramble about my life, let's go. There wasn't an episode last week. I had some very time-sensitive art commissions that had to get completed. And man, I really feel like art has been taking a front seat with my creative endeavors recently, and I'm not mad about that. I really enjoy making visual art, and I could honestly do it all day. I was working with a good friend of mine named Alex Buchanan on a tour flyer for my other two friends, Tyler and Todd, aka Yeti and Toadface, and I think it turned out really, really good. It's one of the I think working with Alex, this is one of our strongest collaborations. So if you'd like to check it out, just peep any of my social media accounts, or if you're on Patreon, I shared it over there. I've also been working on a new track, and I've been sharing updates on that over on my Patreon as well. It's almost finished. I'm just fine-tuning and mixing and mastering, and this one's really experimental. I wanted to make something with a lot of melodic content, a lot of melodies and counter melodies bouncing off of each other. And honestly, it's pretty dense. It's a really dense song, but I think it's turning out really, really well. I'm super stoked about it. I did a show on Friday. It was a benefit for trans rights because, as you know, right now, a lot of rights are being taken away, not just from the LGBTQ plus and trans communities, but from communities abroad, from the disenfranchised abroad, from women, from immigrants, from minorities. This is a strange, dark time in American history that we are making our way through. Things are going to get better, but right now they're kind of dark and kind of weird. And, well, I don't even mean kind of. They're very dark and very weird, but we are getting out of this. We're going to make it through this. So this show Friday was really fun. I did an all live looping set, and most of it was improvised. Some of it was a little bit pre-planned, but I'd say like 90% of it was improvised. And I had a lot of fun just bouncing ideas off of the crowd. There was actually this really silly part of the show where there was this like gaggle of bros, like college bros, that came up right to where I was playing this keyboard solo, and they're like, "Hey, call out our friends at the bar, tell them to come up here." So I finished my track and I called them out. I was like, "Hey, come up here to the front of the stage. Your friends want to dance with you. They want to hang out with you. Get over here." And I just kind of was clowning around, just kind of having fun with it. But their bro friends came over, and one of them literally leaned in and got in my face and was like, "Hey, I need a phone charger. I see all those wires back there. You must have a phone charger." And I was like, really just kind of, it was super abrasive and weird. And I was like, I can't be having this. I can't be having this bro in here acting like he owns the place. So I got on the microphone and I was like, "Fuck your phone." and I made, and all of his bro friends were like, "Oh shit." And I was like, this is going to go one of two ways. This guy's either going to think this is funny or he's going to be mad about it. And he's going to like pour his drink on my equipment or something. But I was just like, you know what? I'm going to run this. I'm going to run it because this guy doesn't need to be coming up into people's faces and getting all aggro at the venue and stuff. So I made this song that just chanted over and over, "Fuck your phone." And his friends all got into it. They were like dancing, and it was kind of like a trap banger with 808s and stuff like that. But they thought it was really funny. I thought it was really funny. And honestly, the guy who asked me for the phone charger realized how ridiculous he was, and he thought it was really funny too. And I got back on the mic and I told him, hey, this is all in good fun. We're just joking around here. Don't take it personally. We're just having fun with you. And he was actually a really, really good sport about it. So big ups to that guy for being such a good sport. And maybe next time he'll think twice about asking a performer for a phone charger. So that was probably the most ridiculous part of the night. Other than that, that was even a great experience. The whole thing was a great experience. 10 out of 10. I played some music with a guitar player that was impromptu and unscripted and really fun and therapeutic, and I felt like we had a really good musical chemistry that just happened organically, and I was really stoked on how all of that unfolded. We raised a bunch of money for Trans Ohio, and I'm really stoked about that. We're going to do some more fundraisers in the future for other communities and other people who are affected by the tyrannical orange man that has taken control of our country and is driving things into the ground at an alarming rate. But enough about that. My son Felix is thriving. We are getting him signed up for preschool very soon, and I'm getting really stoked for that. I think he's going to thrive at preschool. There's going to be a transitional period where he's like, I don't know about this, because he's never done a daycare or anything like that. He's just been either home with me or home with my partner, and we have been raising him like that, taking work shifts and then taking daycare shifts with our son. So this will be an adjustment for him, but I think he will acclimate quickly and he will like it. I think he'll love it. Okay, enough of me yapping. Let's get on to why you're here. Oh, actually, I have just one more thing. One more small thing before we get into the meat of today's episode. Whatever streaming service you are on, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, there is a way to leave a rating, a like, a comment, a review, subscribe, all that jazz. If you could do that, it would help me out so much. It really helps to get this podcast seen and in front of more eyes. If you'd like to take your support a step further, I have a Patreon. Massive shout outs to all of my patrons. Your support means so much to me, so infinite thank yous for that. If you would like to join, the link will be in the show's notes. You get early access to this podcast, my music, art, and other things over there. I'm actually giving away, right now, I'm giving away 3 free subscriptions to my Patreon for a year. They were gifted to me from one of my patrons, a friend and patron named Riley. So huge shout out to him for those 3 gifts. If you want a chance to win this year's subscription, peep out any of my social media accounts and check out the scavenger hunt that I'm currently doing. It's kind of like this photo challenge. I ask you to find things, you tag me in the photos that you find, and then for each photo you get an entry to win a subscription to my Patreon. Like I said, that's over on all my social media, Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, all that stuff. But okay, let's go. Let's get into why you're here. We're going to talk about some conspiracy theories, some of my favorite conspiracies. We're going to get into 5 different outrageous, brain-melting, tinfoil hat-worthy conspiracy theories. Like I said at the top of the show, these aren't the most famous ones. They're not the best ones. They're not, best is subjective. They're not the most infamous ones. They're just 5 that I thought were really fun and really worth talking about for a little bit. Some of them you've probably heard of. Some of them you may not have heard of. Let's get right into the first one. The first conspiracy theory I want to talk about is reptilian humanoid overlords controlling our government. How timely is that? And you've probably heard me mention this a handful of times on the show. This is one of my favorite conspiracy theories, is that there are interdimensional or extraterrestrial creatures that have taken over the bodies of politicians or are wearing human suits and controlling the government from behind the scenes. It's a classic. This is a classic theory that these shapeshifters secretly run the world. And the origins of this theory actually go way back, with ancient myths of serpent gods appearing in multiple cultures, either on drawings, hieroglyphics, or in texts, in writings through different religious forms in one way or another. But the modern idea of reptiles ruling the world was popularized by this guy named David Icke. And David Icke was a former sports broadcaster turned conspiracy theorist who claims that these reptilian entities known as the Anunnaki come from the Alpha Draconis star system and have been manipulating humanity for thousands of years. And the Anunnaki are a real construct. The Anunnaki are a group of deities in the ancient Mesopotamian pantheon. Their name actually means, it translates to those who came from the heavens. So these were ancient Mesopotamian gods. And this is where David Icke leans into actual history, into actual belief systems to tie together his conspiracy. He posits that these Mesopotamian gods are actually alien shapeshifters who came here and that humanity mistook them for gods. And there are actually some theories that say the Anunnaki are genetically engineered humans. They, like most gods and deities, have a hierarchy and lineages, and they evolve and change. And the Sumerian texts describe the Anunnaki as creating humans not through divine means. Humans were created to serve the gods by performing labor and offerings and offering sacrifices. And in some versions, humans were made from clay mixed with blood of a slain god. And in some Mesopotamian traditions, particularly in the later texts, there was this division between the gods, and some of the heavenly gods were banished to earth after this epic battle. And I'm grossly oversimplifying this, but I could do an entire episode on the Anunnaki, and I just might. But like I said, David Icke's theory about them is much different than the ancient Sumerian perspective. They were looking at the Anunnaki as divine heavenly creators that built reality and focused on maintaining its structure and order, while Icke posits that they arrived here on Earth thousands of years ago to control humanity. And he thinks that they did this. He thinks that they came here for a variety of reasons. He thinks that they were looking to mine gold and other materials that they needed, supposedly to build their spacecrafts or fuel their spacecrafts or build other technologies. He also thinks that they arrived here to create a hybrid bloodline by interbreeding with humans. And I'm going to actually get into that a little bit more too here in just a sec. But their goal with that was to establish control over human civilizations. And sometimes people who are in this realm, in this wheelhouse, I guess, people who are of this ilk with the Anunnaki, they think that the Anunnaki they arrived here either to control, like David Icke suggests, or that they arrived here to elevate, to advance human civilization, and that through interbreeding with them or genetically engineering them, that they would be able to turn into this whole new creature that was capable of unimaginable things. They got here on advanced spacecrafts, and the theory usually places their arrival sometime in ancient Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq, where they were supposedly worshipped as gods by early human civilizations. And then there's some evidence that he cites and that other theorists cite as to the actual tangible existence of these Anunnaki gods or interdimensional time reality lords or extraterrestrial Anunnaki lords. There have been skeletons with elongated heads found in different regions all over the world, and they don't really have a unified theory that explains them. But there are a fair amount of people that attribute them to being Anunnaki. or some other celestial being, potentially reptilian or alien. And they allegedly have done DNA studies and tracking that supposes that these skulls and skeletons that have been found all over the world share DNA with people from the Mesopotamian region. So they found a bunch in Peru. They're like, these skeletons aren't from Peru. These skeletons are from Mesopotamia. There's another piece of evidence that a lot of the people who defend the Anunnaki theory lean on, and that's that around 40 to 50,000 years ago, Neanderthals went extinct, and that was due to the rapid growth of the Homo sapiens species. And this is all actual science. This did actually happen between 40 and 50,000 years ago. Neanderthals went extinct and Homo sapiens became the apex species on Earth. That's not a theory. That has been substantiated through fossil records and evidence that scientists have actually found. And almost all scientists agree with the thought that something big happened during that time. That Homo sapiens really hit the gas with inventions, new ideas, and thinking outside the box. And perhaps the Anunnaki arrived, altered our genes, and made us the apex species. This is kind of the thought, the whole backbone of this theory. If you've heard anything about the stoned ape theory, where humans discover mushrooms at different developmental stages of our history, some people say it was that. Some people say the big thing that happened that made Homo sapiens accelerate their minds and their inventions and their technologies was the discovery of psilocybin and the ingestion of psilocybin. I like to believe that. I think maybe the Anunnaki are mushrooms. Maybe the Anunnaki interdimensional reality creators and modifiers live inside of the fungal network. There's modern evidence that Anunnaki believers cite for their theory, like glitches on live TV. You can go on YouTube right now and look at compilations of glitches where politicians' eyes flash and they have like slit pupils or their faces glitch. And there's also, like I said before, the historical depictions in ancient Sumerian carvings of humanoid figures with reptilian features. And then there's this whole part of the theory that I haven't even really touched on about bloodlines and symbolism. Supposedly royal families and powerful elites are all part of this reptilian bloodline, which explains their obsession with snakes and dragon imagery. And it is true, throughout the world there is a lot of obsession with dragons and snakes when you look at crests and shields and things. But I think that's more so, if I had to guess, if I had to like take it out of the hands of this theory, I think that's more so because these things were and are considered powerful creatures that exemplify just power and a driving force to lead and be the apex creature. And of course, like with all of these theories, there are countless counterarguments. Biologists and physicists argue that shape-shifting reptilian physiology is biologically impossible. And that's just, I mean, that kind of goes without saying in terms of an argument against this theory, is that how does a reptile put on a human suit, or how does their biology change and shifts? You have to suspend disbelief in a lot of things we know about science and a lot of things we know about the way reality works and operates to fully enjoy these theories. I'm not saying believe these theories, but to read about these theories and fully enjoy having a fictional investment in them. It's fun. This is just fun. I don't want anyone to think that I am suggesting that I believe in any of these things. I have an open mind and I am willing to explore these theories because I think they're interesting and fun, but I'm not trying to sell you on this. I'm not trying to say there are reptilian humanoid overlords controlling the government. But if there were, I'd want to know how it all works. I'd want to see behind the veil and look into the eyes of the reptiles. One last thing before we move on to our next conspiracy theory, into our next thing. I do just want to say for the record that there are actually a lot of people that view the Anunnaki or the space reptilian creature entity things, they don't view them as bad. There are a fair amount of people that think they didn't come here to control us, but that they needed us to become even more powerful than themselves, and that by merging with our DNA or manipulating our DNA, they were able to unlock deep secrets of the universe. That them coming here was part of some divine plan to enhance and elevate the human species, that it was the natural progression of where we needed to go as a species is to merge with the Anunnaki, and that we, in essence, are them, that they live inside of us based on their merging with us, and that Homo sapiens are in fact this new version of Anunnaki humanoid fusion. And I like that idea too. I like the idea that there was this super intelligent, super awesome, powerful creature that decided, and it almost makes you wonder, were they lost? Did they need us to keep going? I don't know if you're familiar with Spider-Man and Venom. I feel like most people have heard of Venom at this point, the movies and all that jazz. So they need us. The Venom symbiotes, they need humans, or they need a host to be able to survive. But in taking on their host, in becoming one with their host, the host and the symbiote become more powerful than they would have been separately. Maybe it's kind of like that. Maybe the Anunnaki are working with our DNA in a symbiotic relationship. They arrived here, they're like, hey, we don't want to kill you, we just want to become you. We want to change the way you operate and change your biology and physiology, and we'll work together to become the most advanced species of all time. That's kind of the way I like to look at the Anunnaki. I don't think there's actually reptilian time reality lords living behind the scenes. Let's get into our next theory. And this one I had to include because I just like the idea of this. I like the idea of how absurd this one is. And that is that dinosaurs helped build the pyramids. This one, like I said, is just delightfully ridiculous. For a minute, let's forget Anunnaki, let's forget aliens. We're going to talk about dinosaurs, and we're going to talk about dinosaurs, or at least surviving prehistoric creatures that helped ancient Egyptians construct the pyramids, because nothing is more efficient than a brontosaurus-powered crane. And I'm sorry, I can't help but think of the Flintstones. If you ever watched the Flintstones cartoon, they have dinosaurs. They coexist with dinosaurs, and dinosaurs help them every single day. The garbage disposal is a dinosaur. Their construction equipment is dinosaurs. Their traffic lights, I'm pretty sure, were dinosaurs. Their whole infrastructure was created and maintained by dinosaurs. If there was ever a dinosaur strike, they would have been screwed. So where does this theory come from? How do we come to this conclusion that dinosaurs helped to build the pyramids, that they put blocks on their back and hoisted them up with their power to build these huge hyperstructures? And it all stems from the idea that dinosaurs and humans coexisted. And this directly contradicts mainstream science's timeline of evolution and just timeline in general. So out the gate, in order to believe this theory, you have to accept that dinosaurs and humans cohabitated Earth. I really don't think that's true, but I really like the idea of it. I really like the fantasy of it. And some believers of this theory point to ancient Egyptian art depicting large reptilian creatures that they interpret as dinosaurs. And you can Google this too. If you Google Egyptian dinosaur hieroglyphics, you do see creatures, and you do see large reptilian creatures that are depicted. And they, the thing about it is, they weren't just writing reality on their walls. They were telling stories. They were a lot of things that they were decorating Egypt with were for entertainment purposes as well, or at least that's what scientists think. It wasn't all just a historical record of things that actually happened. There were stories for fun that you could read and be like, "Oh, that was fun." Why would you just want history decorating your walls? You'd want cool pictures and cool creatures. But this theory also ties into the biblical young earth creationist belief that the earth is only 6,000 years old, meaning dinosaurs weren't wiped out that long ago, or they weren't wiped out that long before ancient Egypt's rise. Some of the arguments to defend this theory is that not all of the dinosaurs were wiped out in this very short time frame that the Earth has been around, 6,000 years, that some of them went extinct, most of them went extinct, but some of them still existed. Some of them were still around, or versions of them had evolved and become these huge leftover dinosaur creatures that Egypt was able to find, bring to the pyramid building sites, and harness their power. Which, if you do believe this theory, could make sense, because at the time, Egypt was the most powerful empire in the world. So they had access to resources other empires did not have access to, technologies and resources and stuff like that. And it makes me wonder how they would have got them there. Just lasso a brontosaurus and walk them through the desert on the sand dunes? Or did they, because the Nile was running through Egypt, so did they put them on rafts? Let's say they found them south. They found them in like South Africa. How are they getting them up to Egypt? Or maybe they were just there. Maybe they just had them the whole time and they put them to work. They had them as pets. The rulers had them as pets, but they decided to use them to build their tombs. This is a pretty wild just image to think about. And another piece of evidence that makes this argument work is that, I'm going to butcher the name of this creature, but in the 20th century, scientists found this fish called the coelacanth, and the coelacanth was thought to have been extinct for millions of years before they found one in the 20th century. I think it was like in the 1920s or 1930s, they found this thing that they thought was just gone, was wiped off the face of the earth. It was in science books, and as a fossil, it became one of the first known, quote, living fossils. So people cite this explanation of saying, hey, see, we thought this thing was dead for millions of years. Who's to say that dinosaurs were actually dead for millions of years when the Egyptians were building their pyramids? That's one of the biggest arguments for this. And there are obviously tons of counter arguments. We have carbon dating, we have fossil records that clearly show dinosaurs died out somewhere between 64 and 66 million years before humans were even on Earth. And a lot of people say that most of these alleged dinosaur depictions are either artistic interpretations of crocodiles or misidentified other creatures, which is just, that would just suck. If you were an artist back then and you were etching your art onto a temple thousands of years ago, and then thousands of years in the future, people misinterpreted it, I'd feel salty. I'd be like, damn, I was trying to draw a crocodile and y'all thought it was a T-Rex. Come on. That's not what I was trying to draw. That's not what I was trying to etch. And then we come into the thought of maybe the Anunnaki helped. Maybe the Anunnaki were the ones that tamed the dinosaurs in the first place. Speaking of the pyramids and all that, and I'm just going to touch on this briefly, have you guys been seeing all of the new info coming out about there being pillars beneath the pyramids, and they're connected to these boxes, like deep down in the earth? And I don't know. I don't know if any of this, I don't know how much of this is true because of the internet and AI and misinformation and trolls, but I was super skeptical. But apparently, allegedly, supposedly, there is a bit of truth to these discoveries. And if you're like, what the heck? If you're thinking, what am I even talking about? Go just Google it right now and you'll see that there have been new discoveries, new technologies at the pyramids. And based on different videos, based on what you read or what you watch, there are these pillars that are underneath the pyramids that are going deep, deep, deep down into the earth, and they're connected to these boxes. And they think that these tubes and boxes were some kind of electrical generating device, that they were generating some kind of power with these devices. And they used these radar scans to find these new structures. They haven't actually unearthed them. This is all radar scan technology that I don't fully understand. But Google it. If you haven't heard anything about it, Google it. There's a bunch of the part that gets not dubious, but the part that gets misinformation-y about it is that there are a lot of 3D renderings of what these structures might look like, and people are taking those as fact. They look like this. They did this. It's like, no, 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 no. They have very rudimentary understanding of what this stuff was. They don't fully understand what it did or even what it looks like yet. But there are images of the radar findings that you can look at. And the 3D models of what they could be do look really cool. They do. It does make the pyramids look like some kind of spaceship or something, or that they were tapping into the essence of the earth to power their pyramids. That's a whole other rabbit hole, is getting into what the pyramids were actually for, because I don't think, and a lot of people don't think, they were just tombs. A lot of people think that they were some sort of conduit, some sort of power, they generated some kind of power. They were tombs, that is true, but they weren't just tombs. There was something else. There was a lot more going on there than just that. Let's get into our next one. This one's going to be super brief, but I had to include it because I love how ridiculous it is. And that is that the moon is a hologram. And you thought the moon was a giant rock floating in space, because that's exactly what they wanted you to believe. Some conspiracy theorists claim that the moon is not real at all, and that it is a holographic projection. So where does this theory come from? The idea is rooted in the belief that the moon landings were faked. And to maintain this illusion, a giant projection is cast into the sky, either of the moon itself or onto the surface of the moon, depending on what part of this conspiracy theory family you are attached to. Some theorists claim that high-powered telescopes occasionally reveal glitches in the moon's surface, like a flickering effect or strange patterns. And you can see YouTube videos of this as well. If you just YouTube or Google moon glitches, you'll see people who have allegedly captured this. There's even more evidence if you dive down the rabbit hole of flat Earth or other space-related conspiracies. There is a really popular belief that NASA is just full of deception, that they have been deceiving us for years and years. And since the government allegedly lies about space travel, why wouldn't they also fake the moon? Another piece of evidence that is cited is that we only see one side of the moon. It always faces Earth, which fuels this idea that the moon is an artificial construct. And it is wild that we only see one face of the moon. That is true. But the reason we only see one face of the moon is, and this is really trippy to me, there's a lot of cosmic serendipitous things, kind of miracles that are happening within our timeline as humans that we get to see. But the reason that we only see one side of the moon is that it is rotating perfectly in sync with our rotation. So as we spin, it also spins, but they're so synced up that we only see one side. It's kind of hard to explain without a visual representation of this, but this is also something you can Google or YouTube and get a visual representation of that explains it better than I can. But basically, we're locked in this dance together. So we're spinning as the moon's spinning, and we don't get to see the other side of the moon. If you actually watch a time lapse of the moon, it does wobble back and forth, or it appears to wobble because we're not technically perfectly synced up. Sometimes we see a little bit more left, sometimes we see a little bit more right of the surface of the moon, of the side that we can see, because it's not a perfect sync, but that is the reason we only see one side. It's also pretty wild too, and this is another cosmic syncing event that wasn't the case in the past and won't be the case in the future. But when we have an eclipse, we're at this perfect point in cosmic history where the moon is just far, where the earth and moon are just far away enough from the sun that when an eclipse happens, it appears to cover the entirety of the sun, because obviously the sun and moon are not the same size, but it appears that way based on the proximity that we are from the sun. And it's just because we're living in this time period in the universe that it won't always look that way. Someday when the moon passes over the sun, it'll just look like a dot passing over the sun. It won't cover it like it does, but we're lucky enough to live in this miracle time period. I don't know if y'all saw the solar eclipse that happened recently. Not like recently, but happened. Was it last year? Yeah, I think it was last year that the solar eclipse happened. It was beautiful. It was really, really pretty. Hang on, I'm going to Google, when was that? Was that last year? Whoa, when you Google solar eclipse, a little solar eclipse animation flashes on the screen. That's trippy. Yeah, it was last April 8th, 2024. That's what I thought. I was like, time is weird, you know. Sometimes I have to look stuff like this up because I'm old and I don't I don't remember time frames. But yeah, it was last April. So pretty. But bouncing back to this actual conspiracy theory, there are a ton of counter arguments to the theory. Astronomers have used telescopes for centuries to study the moon's physical surface. We have lunar rocks, seismic data, and laser reflectors placed on the moon that confirm it's a solid body. And I've actually done some research in the past about where the moon came from. And there are two primary theories, and I'm just going to talk about them really briefly. The two main theories are the lunar capture theory, and there's also the massive impact theory. The lunar capture theory just says, you know, we're over here chilling on Earth, we have a gravitational pull, and that a celestial object, the moon, was flying through space and that it got captured in our orbit and remains in our orbit. And that is the moon. Essentially, in a nutshell, very oversimplified, but that is the lunar capture theory. The massive impact theory is that starts the same. We're over here chilling as Earth, and there is a celestial object coming toward Earth, but that object hits Earth, and then there's all this debris and all of this just stuff, all this rock, that gets exploded out into space, and all of that debris starts circling Earth. It gets caught in the gravitational field, and then there's this thing that happens in space called accretion. And accretion is when material kind of compresses and gets stuck together and turns into a sphere. And that is the basis for the massive impact theory, is that all that debris got caught in our orbit, compressed into a sphere, and became the moon. So along with this really, really ridiculous moon hologram theory, we also have the hollow moon theory, which is a whole other thing, and it's exactly what it sounds like. So with the hollow moon theory, some say that the moon is a natural thing and it's just hollow, and others say that the moon is in fact a space station for aliens, that the hollow moon theory is actually And the hollow moon theory is actually another favorite of our boy David Icke. Maybe the Anunnaki are stationed inside of the moon. That's their moon base. But there is some evidence to support this hollow moon theory. Between 1969 and 1977, seismometers installed on the moon by the Apollo missions recorded moonquakes. And the moon was described as ringing like a bell during some of these quakes, especially the shallow ones. There's also other astronauts that, when they landed on the moon, claimed that it rang like a bell. I like to think that the moon is a spaceship. The Anunnaki flew here on the moon, they came out of their spaceship, and then they came down to Earth. Why not? Why not? Let's get into our second to last theory, and that is that birds aren't real. They're government drones. So the next time you see a pigeon staring at you, be suspicious, because it might be a government surveillance drone. This one's just kind of fun and funny. I had to include it because it is a theory, but it's also kind of this tongue-in-cheek joke where everyone knows it's fake, but they push it for they push it kind of just for fun and to push back on the ridiculousness of other conspiracy theories. Peter Mickendoe, and I think I'm saying that right, Peter Mickendoe created the satirical conspiracy theory on a whim in January 2017 after seeing pro-Trump counter-protesters at the 2017 Women's March in Memphis, Tennessee. Mickendoe wrote, "Birds aren't real" on a poster and improvised a conspiracy theory amongst the counter-protesters as a spontaneous joke. And this theory started as so it was kind of this satirical performance piece. There are small amounts of people that actually do buy into this theory, or so they claim to. It's hard to say with this one because people will take a joke all the way to the grave. They'll push it as far as it can go. So the people who claim to actually believe this, the jury's still out. Like, do you though? Do you? It became a movement. This performance became an entire thing. It exploded. It became viral. And it claims that all birds in the United States were exterminated by the federal government between 1959 and 1971 and replaced by look-alike drones used by the government to spy on citizens. You might have seen bumper stickers or maybe even t-shirts that say birds aren't real. It really blew up for a minute. But they actually have nuggets of air quote evidence that they lean on for this theory that birds sitting on power lines are just recharging. And another piece of evidence is that no one sees baby pigeons. And that's because drone units are released at government facilities. There are no baby pigeons. And you ever wonder how birds always seem to follow you? Obvious surveillance behavior. And then there's also the evidence that U.S. President John F. Kennedy was assassinated by the government due to his reluctance to kill all the birds. And this next thing is a quote from Peter Mickendoe on 60 Minutes. So it's taking this concept of misinformation and almost building a little safe space to come together within it and laugh at it, rather than be scared by it and accept the lunacy of it all and be a bird truther for a moment in a time where everything's so crazy. And I'm not even really going to get into the counter arguments here. I took some notes, but obviously this is for fun and it's just a joke. like there's no way all the birds could be drones. It just doesn't work. And I really like how this theory kind of parallels the flying spaghetti monster theory, or the flying spaghetti monster, or the church of the flying spaghetti monster, which the religion here is Pastafarianism. And Pastafarianism is a parody. It's a new religious movement that promotes a lighthearted view of religion. And it actually originated in opposition to the teaching of intelligent design in public schools in the United States. So basically parents were saying, we want you to teach that God created everything, and we demand it. And there was all this legislation that was kind of in this gray area, about to be passed, about to maybe not be passed in certain states. And then the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, in opposition to this, pops up and says, we want you to teach that there is a giant flying spaghetti monster that created reality and is the God of all things. And why is your religion more valid than ours? Why should we consider your books and your religious texts and your belief systems any more valid than ours? And I like that. And that's the parallel here, is that that birds aren't real is just as ridiculous as some conspiracy theories that people lean on to push their agendas and their beliefs in this really gross, weird way. So I had to include it. I had to include this theory because I think it's just an anomalous, fun thing. Let's get into our very last one. This one's going to be super, super brief, but I wanted to do 5. I wanted to round out the list with 5. And this one is that time travel is real and celebrities are proof. And the evidence is old photographs showing lookalikes of modern celebrities. You can Google this too. There are a ton of photos online of, look, it's Nicolas Cage from 1913 and stuff like that. Like, literally, some of them are obvious photoshops. Some of them are potentially photos that look like modern day celebrities. It's a pretty wide range of reality meets photoshoppery. There's also evidence of the Mandela effect suggests that our timeline is constantly being altered. And the Mandela effect, everyone knows, is you thought something was one way and it's actually the other way. Like the Flintstones. Is that Flinstones? Or is that Flintstones? There's also the Berenstein Bears. There's also Looney Tunes. There's all these names that get thrown around with the Mandela effect, and all of these things in your past that you thought were one way that are actually the other way. The Kazam and Shazam movies with, what is it, Shaq as a genie, which never existed, but people swear up and down that it did. But people who lean into this theory claim that the Mandela effect has been manipulating our timeline. It's been altering our timeline. Some theorists claim celebrities like Keanu Reeves, Jay-Z, Queen Latifah bear striking resemblances to historical figures, arguing they might be travelers from the past or the future. Alleged government whistleblowers have claimed secret time travel programs exist, like Project Pegasus, which supposedly sent people, including a young Barack Obama, back in time. And we're going to break down Project Pegasus here in just a second. But the origins, what are the origins of this theory? People have been fascinated with time travel for centuries. You know, H.G. Wells had the time machine. And then today we have, in modern physics, we have modern theories for wormholes and black holes and time dilation. So we've been fascinated with time and time travel and time travelers for a very long time. And there are internet forums today that have fueled these theories, with people posting old paintings, black and white photographs with eerie celebrity resemblances. Like I said, just Google this. You'll see countless time traveling celebrities. And then, of course, there are the counter arguments to this. Most cases of celebrity doppelgangers are coincidences, as human features repeat across history. And this is the most logical explanation for all of this. Everyone has a doppelganger. Everyone has someone that looks almost exactly like them. There are only so many human facial archetypes that can be combined. And of course, if you span the course of human history, you're going to find people that look like other people, that look like you. You're going to find someone that looks exactly like your brother or your sister, your aunt or your uncle. That's just the way that it works. So inevitably, you're going to find people throughout history that look like celebrities. All right, so I said I was going to talk about Project Pegasus, which is its whole other thing. I'm not giving it its own category. I'm lumping it into this one because, like I said, I'm only doing 5 of these theories. But Project Pegasus is a conspiracy theory that claims the US government developed secret time travel technology and has been using it since at least the 1970s. It was popularized by Andrew Basiago, a self-proclaimed whistleblower who alleges that as a child he was part of a classified DARPA program that sent him and others, including a young Barack Obama, back in time through a device known as the chronovisor. And Basiago claims that Project Pegasus was part of a broader effort to control history and ensure key figures reached positions of power. He also alleges that time travel was used to gather intelligence on the future and that government operatives were sent back to witness historical events like Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. It's a wild, Project Pegasus is wild. It's some real sci-fi plot scenarios. We need you to go back and learn the technology. We need you to go back and bring technologies with you. Maybe they're the Anunnaki. Oh, snap. The Anunnaki's behind Project Pegasus, and they're behind manipulating time and bringing technologies into different time frames and having people change historical events for the benefit and the downfall simultaneously of the human race. It all makes sense. Okay, so the chronovisor is powered by the Great Pyramids, which were built by dinosaurs, which they use the chronovisor to go back in time and bring the dinosaurs to the Great Pyramids so that they could build the pyramids in the first place. Does that make sense? And then when the Anunnaki came down from their hollow moon base, they decided we need to power this thing on. And once we power this thing on, we can manipulate the DNA throughout space-time so that we can go back to our moon base and send off samples of it to the Draconis star system. And once we have enough samples of the human DNA, we can then align the planets in this cosmic serendipitous time frame so that we can open the portal to the next dimension and do it all over again. It's pretty wild stuff. Let's get into our second to last segment of the show. This is something I like to call Let's Ask AI. Let's Ask AI. Today I asked AI, what do you think is the silliest conspiracy theory? I'm sorry if you believe these things, but AI fired some shots. They said, if I had to pick a particularly silly conspiracy theory, I'd go with the flat earth theory. Sorry, flat earthers, this is coming straight, don't shoot the messenger. This is coming straight from AI. Despite overwhelming scientific evidence and direct observation confirming Earth's spherical shape for centuries, the modern flat earth movement continues to insist our planet is a flat disk. What makes this especially absurd? We've literally seen Earth from space countless times through satellite imagery and astronaut photography. You can observe ships disappearing hull first over the horizon with your own eyes. Time zones and seasons wouldn't work on a flat planet. People routinely fly around the globe in commercial aircraft. We can directly measure Earth's curvature through various simple experiments, and ancient civilizations determined Earth was round over 2,000 years ago using basic observations and mathematics. It's all a conspiracy from NASA. Anyway, the mental gymnastics flat earthers perform to explain away these contradictions often involve increasingly complex conspiracy theories claiming NASA, airlines, pilots, scientists, and governments worldwide are all maintaining an elaborate hoax for reasons that are never quite clear. What makes it fascinating as a conspiracy theory is that it requires dismissing not just expertise, but direct observable evidence anyone can verify themselves. Wow. Shots fired at the flat earth community from AI. Let's get into our final segment of the show and then we'll wrap this thing up. At the end of each episode, I like to do a list of fun facts. So, our first fun fact for today is that the US government once investigated ESP and psychic powers. The CIA ran a program called Project Stargate during the Cold War to test whether remote viewing, seeing distant locations physically, could be used for spying. A lot of you have probably heard of this next fun fact, but there is a theory called the Paul is dead theory. Some believe Paul McCartney died in 1966 and was replaced with a lookalike. Fans claim to hear hidden messages in songs and point to strange album cover clues. And I think this is one theory that popped up and maybe they pushed it. Maybe they embedded this theory into their music and into their imagery to push that. I would. If I was in a group or a band and someone thought I was dead, I'd push it just for the heck of it. Why not? It's kind of funny. Our next fun fact is that there is this war that wasn't really a war, but it's called the Great Emu War. And some people claim that it's a Mandela effect thing, but it actually did happen. It's not a conspiracy. It's this bizarre event that happened in Australia where the Australian military waged war against emus in 1932 because there was this exploding emu population that was eating crops and just disrupting Australia. And the funny part about it is that the emus won. The military was not able to stabilize the emu population. This next one's pretty funny. NASA accidentally taped over the original moon landing footage. And this is real. This isn't even a conspiracy theory. NASA admitted in 2006 that the original Apollo 11 video was erased and reused due to a shortage of magnetic tapes. And this, of course, really fuels the conspiracy theorists. They're like, oh, you don't have the original taping of it? Sure, you taped over it. Which, honestly, in their defense, is really weird. Why would you tape over that? You didn't have another tape you could have taped over? Weird. It's just like, why? What? And this is our last fun fact for today. It's another conspiracy theory that actually exists. And that is that Finland doesn't exist. A viral conspiracy suggests that Finland is just a fabricated landmass to hide secret fishing zones between Russia and Japan. No one has explained how millions of Finnish people exist, though. Have you ever been to Finland? I've never been to Finland. It might not even be there. It's probably not. And that wraps up our episode on these just fun, delightfully ridiculous conspiracy theories. Reality is a really trippy, wiggly thing, and it's fun to think about the what-ifs and the maybes of how things work and how things don't work. Don't get too lost down those rabbit holes, but always remember to question everything and keep an open mind. Don't forget to leave those ratings, reviews, likes, comments, subscribe, all that jazz. There's a link to my Patreon in the show's notes. Thanks for hanging out with me on this one. I'll see you next time, and until then, don't forget to check on your mental health, and don't forget to check on the mental health of your loved ones. Bye.
Analog thoughts. Analog